All righty. So we've already kind of started diving our way in through the assessments chapter. So right now, what we're going to look at is we're going to kind of work our way through this singular PowerPoint over the next few days as we look at the various different types of assessments that are out there. One of the things that we got to remember about fitness assessments is that we primarily divide our fitness assessment information into two primary categories, right? We're going to divide it into our subjective information, which is basically all of the immeasurable information that is very important, but like not something that we can sort of track direct progress on because it's not measurable, you know. But it is information that's very important about our clients, right? And then we've got our objective information, which is very measurable. So just go ahead and just quickly looking at the difference here, right? Objective information is any information about my client that I can measure, right? So for instance, if I ask my client how old they are, right? And they say that they are 39 years old, right? That's a number that is going to change at the same time it's a number that I can track progress on, right? Now it's not a number that I can necessarily like improve. You know, we're not going to roll the clock back, although we can roll back how they feel. It's just a number that I'm tracking that I can keep an eye on and you know, measure directly. Let's say my client tells me that they weigh 184 pounds, right? And they want to be, we'll say 150 pounds, right? Okay, great. So that is a number that I can track like over time. And so now if I write a program that sort of reflects that my client's goals, right, I can track the direct numbers to see if they are, you know, heading in the right direction to meet those goals, right? So that's where objective information comes in. It's very, very handy, you know, and it generally tends to be the kind of stuff that we pay the most attention to in programs, right? Like a lot of you guys are probably like, if you're weightlifting regularly, you're probably tracking your weights so that you can like, you know, look for improvement. If you are trying to get better at like cardio, you're probably tracking your mileage, or you're tracking your times, right? And all of that is like stuff that we can watch for improvements on. It's very, very number based. So I think that like sometimes because there's so much objective information, clients tend to, or trainers tend to put like a big emphasis on it. But I do want to encourage you guys to also pay attention to the subjective information that comes before you get all the objective information, because a lot of times it's going to be the whys behind the whats, right? So if the what is, you know, our client, if the what is our client has, let's say, a posture analysis, pronation distortion syndrome, right? That we looked at yesterday, you know, they're flattening their feet, their knees are caving in. And then we ask them questions about like what their job looks like. And they're like, yeah, I have a pretty sedentary job. And, you know, I have to wear high heels at work because it's like part of the dress code. And not like high heels, but I mean like elevated heels, like dress shoes, you know? And so it's like those two things combined lead to this person sort of all day sitting in a passive, like pronated position, right? So it's like, oh, that's how we got to where we're at, you know? I'm trying to remember what the question actually was yesterday, but we had like some questions yesterday about like, you know, how long is it going to take to like fix like somebody's posture depending on like where they happen to be, right? Like how long would it take to fix an anterior pelvic tilt or something like that? And it's a really hard question to answer because like we don't really know how they got there, you know? I don't know enough about like, you know, what in their lifestyle sort of like led to this posture, you know? Is it maybe like they have a perfectly active life, but they just have the bad habit of only stretching half their muscles? Probably not, you know, like probably not like caused by the gym directly. It's like, you know, they're doing too much, you know, hanging leg raises, you know, and it causes their hip flexors to tighten up. I doubt it, you know. But like clearly something in their life is at play that has sort of like altered their posture over time, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at. We need to get to the heart of what that is. We're going to do that through fitness assessments, right? We're going to do that through like gathering as much information about our client as possible. So looking at our general information here, right? If we're looking at our fitness assessments, and we're looking at understanding the cardiovascular system. Actually, let me delete some of that extra space down here at the bottom. First thing we're going to gather when it comes to subjective information is just information about our client in general, right? So the subjective stuff, and actually, let's go to NASM's website here. So this is available on NASM's website. If you go to nasm.org, you will actually find this under the downloads tab. Over here, if you go to trainer resources, downloads, you will find they have first off, they also have a lot of like podcasts and stuff, which are kind of cool. If you ever want to listen to any of that, some of that can be very, very helpful. They got little mini courses as well, which are kind of cool. But if I go down here to the assessment forms tab section, you're going to see we've got one called the PAR-Q. We've got the lifestyle and health history handout, body composition, static posture assessment, and cardio assessment template. So these are various different template forms that we're going to use on our client. So, let's say, Eric walks through the door and is like, hey, I'm here to get assessed. I want to decide whether or not I want to sign up for personal training. And so I get like it's the free 1 hour session that every client gets at a gym, right? I'm going to be like, great, let's go ahead and, I need to know about your, body first. So let's put you through like an overall workup so I can figure out like what's going on, right? So these are the forms where we're going to kind of write down this information. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this subjective bit here, right? So when it comes to subjective information, the main stuff that we're going to gather, this is like the interview that comes before your workout, right? So it's immeasurable information, right? Like that's like if I asked, Julio, what your favorite TV show is, you'd be probably able to tell me like what your favorite, you might be able to come up with an answer at some point. But if I asked you like, how much it's your favorite show, your answer would have to be something like, I don't know, a lot. Like you can't really put like a number on it, right? That's what subjective information is. It's very, it's very important information, but it's not necessarily measurable information, right? Or if I asked you what your occupation is, right? That obviously has to do with like your level of stress and how much activity you get per day, right? But it doesn't necessarily, I can't put a number on it and measure progress, right? So subjective information is information that can't be measured, and it gives the fitness professional feedback regarding our client's personal history. These are things like their occupation, their lifestyle, and their medical background. So the three major categories we're going to see here, the first one is what's called the PAR-Q. That's the Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire, the General and Medical History Questionnaire, and then an Occupation and Lifestyle History Questionnaire. It's basically any information about the medical stuff. Then we'll get into objective information, physiologic assessments, body composition assessments, cardio, which we'll look at today, static and dynamic posture, and then like performance categories. So subjective information, like I said, we're going to start there. This is a really good opportunity, by the way. This is the first thing you're going to do with your client when they walk through the door for that 1 hour fitness assessment, right? Like if I go to, I don't know if this is going to be a mistake. If I go to lafitness.com or 24 or whatever, pick any commercial gym out there. If we go to their website, which apparently LA Fitness's website is, okay, that was like really slow, right? And I look for, or like, what's going to happen in like the personal training. Everybody's going to get that like 1 hour, free fitness assessment, right? Like this one's like complimentary fitness assessment. They got a little asterisk there because I'm sure there's, you got to be like a brand new member or whatever. And it says like, I can schedule it now, right? And so that's going to put me with one of their trainers. They're going to get 1 hour to train me and try to sell me personal training, right? Like they get 1 hour to like, fully have my attention and try to sell personal training to me. This is where you guys are going to do your fitness assessments. Like this is like you get 1 hour to basically, state your case and try to sell yourself. So the better you can, build a relationship with this person in 1 hour's time, the easier that's going to be. And so this is why we do also really want to put the emphasis on our subjective information, because it's an opportunity for us to sit down and interview our client and learn a little bit about them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do our health screening. Okay, now this is mandatory for anybody, not only because it's important to make sure that like you aren't gonna murder someone, take them up the stairs and be like, all right, we're doing 500 burpees today. You're not giving them the world's hardest workout and causing a heart attack. Not only is it important for that, but it's important to keep you and the client safe, right? Guys, I've never heard of anybody actually having a problem like this, but accidents theoretically can happen to pretty much any trainer out there. Like anybody can have a heart attack working out in the gym. They could be a regularly like healthy person. Like there could just be really bad luck. I remember like when I was in high school, some kid who was on the cross country team. I didn't know him, like I was a freshman, he was a senior. But this kid like was out on a jog one day and he had a heart attack, like a high school kid. And it wasn't like a heart attack, like a myocardial infarction. Like it wasn't like he had a blood clot or anything. One of his blood vessels, unfortunately, just became detached. He had a connective tissue disorder, and it was just like a birth deformity that like they never found and didn't know about. And so he was like, I don't know, right? And he died. Like his heart basically, like one of the tubes basically cracked and leaked, and it was tragic and really, messed up, especially considering that this kid was in great shape. That could theoretically happen to any of us or our clients, right? So there has to be like a little bit of like leeway for the trainer out there who happens to have a client who maybe gets injured during a training session, right? So how do we cover ourselves legally? How do we protect ourselves and protect our clients, right? Well, one of the things that we can do is we can cover our bases by trying our best. We actually get a lot of credit for doing our best to not hurt our client, right? So one of the ways to ensure that you are doing your best is to make sure that you ask your client if it is even safe for them to engage in exercise today. So the first part of any fitness assessment, the very first thing you are going to do is you are going to have your client fill out what is called the physical activity readiness questionnaire, the PAR-Q. These are any questions that are directed towards detecting cardiorespiratory dysfunction. So go to NASM's website here, click this PAR-Q, and you'll see these are 7 questions all about whether or not your client has some type of like cardiorespiratory or skeletal dysfunction, right? So question 1, has your doctor ever said that you have a heart condition or high blood pressure? So heart condition, high blood pressure, that would be marked as a yes. Do you feel any pain in your chest when you're at rest or during physical activity? Yes or no. Do you lose your balance because of like dizziness, or have you lost consciousness randomly, right? That could be a blood pressure issue. Have you ever been diagnosed with a chronic medical condition other than heart disease? So if they say they have diabetes or something like that. Are you currently taking any prescribed medications for chronic conditions? And then do you currently or have you had a bone, joint, or soft tissue problem that could be made worse by physical activity? And then lastly, probably the most important question, has your doctor ever said that you should only do a medically supervised physical activity program? 99% of your clients will say no to everything on this list. Or if they do say yes to anything on this list, they will then say that, yes, I have diabetes, which is why my doctor told me directly to start exercising more. That's why I'm hiring a trainer. So if my client says that they have a medical condition, let's say heart disease, right? Let's say my client has had a heart attack, right? They're like, yeah, I had a heart attack 6 months ago. My doctor just cleared me for physical activity and said that it's time for me to start going to the gym regularly. Great. That is a big yes on the PAR-Q, but it is also, my client told me that their doctor has prescribed them to go to the gym and hire a trainer. So as long as they're telling the truth, that immediately keeps me safe if my client has a heart attack walking up the stairs to the gym floor, you know, because I was told that, I did everything in my power to find out if they were going to have a medical condition. And I was told that, yes, they did, but that they were supposed to do this, right? Their doctor told them to do this. Now, there's got to be some wiggle room, right? Like, let's say that this person's family is like, they, gave my so-and-so a heart attack, right? And they take it, what's going to happen is like a judge is going to look at it and be like, did you do everything in your power to keep this person safe? And you're like, yeah, I did. I even asked to make sure that it was safe to even start. And that's like, all right, well, accidents happen, case closed, and that's what the PAR-Q is for. It is proof that we did everything in our power to keep our clients safe. So if they answer no to everything in this, great, just move on, have them sign it and they are good to go. So this is kind of like a super waiver, right? Then if they said yes to anything, they can go down to this much more advanced version. And you can see like this is going to go way more in depth into any specific medical conditions out there. It's pretty much got all the common ones on it. And if they say yes to anything on here, now they are going to sign the participant declaration. The participant declaration basically says, yes, I do have this medical condition, but I am declaring that I want to engage in this exercise program despite my medical downfalls, right? And that's, again, keeping you and the client safe, right? You did your due diligence to find anything out, and you did everything you can to keep yourself legally safe. So the first thing you're going to do is that PAR-Q. And there will be different versions of PAR-Qs out there, guys. Like some of you guys who end up working in like 24-hour fitness or LA Fitness or places like that, they'll have like their version of these things. But it's a health history questionnaire that is looking for any like medical dysfunction. If they say yes to anything and they don't have doctor's clearance, then it's going to be important for you to say, hey, I need you to go speak with your doctor before we engage in any exercise program. I have not really had to do that in my career. Most of the time, like clients will declare that they're like, yeah, no, I'm cleared to exercise and stuff. My doctor's always encouraging me, right? And luckily we live in California where like verbal contracts are actually fairly strong in this state. So as long, even if they're lying, if they like, let's say they have a heart attack and they're like, you go in front of a judge and like, I never said, I was not like cleared by my doctor to do this, right? We are going to have our PAR-Q, we have it in our client's file. And it's like, well, according to this, it says that you did, so that's the first thing we do. That's where all of our fitness assessments start. And it's just a little bit of a waiver to keep you safe. And obviously, like, waivers only go so far. But this is like an industry standard one, which is really great because that means that like legally, a lot of people have seen this exact questionnaire. That's actually why I recommend, even if you do work at LA Fitness and stuff, I've never heard of anybody having problems. I've never even heard of anybody having problems like this. But I would even still I always did like NASM's PAR-Q because if anything did happen, and maybe I used like LA Fitness's, as well. Since I did both, I was always just very, very, very covered. And this is available for download free on NASM's website. It's the one that's in your textbook as an example. So this is the one that I always recommend. So that's where it's going to start. Once you've done, and by the way, this takes 5 minutes out of your session time, right? Just kind of get through that questionnaire as quickly as possible. Once you get through that questionnaire very quickly, now like you're good to go and we can get into the more advanced stuff. So next one we're going to do is we are going to get our health history questionnaire. Okay, so this is sometimes called the general or medical health history questionnaire. On NASM's website, you can see they call it the lifestyle and health history handout. I really like this new version. This is probably the best version they've come up with so far, at least that I've seen in the various years that they've always had like some version of this out there. But these are going to be questions that are related to your clients, like lifestyle, occupation, and things like that. So this is going to have directly to do with, like, again, like if my client has really tight hip flexors, right, and they got a really bad anterior pelvic tilt, how'd they get there? Like what made that happen, right? Well, chances are they have a job that requires like extended periods of sitting. We know if they're sitting in hip flexion all day, it would make sense that they're going to have this like postural distortion. So that's one of the questions we ask. We can actually see on the health history handout. Once we get past some of this, we go over to our lifestyle and occupation, right? It's like, what's your occupation? Does it require extended periods of sitting, right? We know that extended periods of sitting can tighten up those hip flexors. We also know that it leads to low energy expenditure. If my client's like, yeah, I've been on diet and exercise programs and I just don't get the results that I think I should be, right? We know that, like, well, chances are, like, we look at their job and it's like, chances are your body's finding a way to burn even less energy throughout the day. We're going to talk about this next mod when we get into the weight loss mod, because like we know that the only thing that results in weight loss or weight gain is like an energy discrepancy. Okay. So like if you have more energy coming in than there is energy going out, you're going to gain weight. Black and white, that's how it works, and if you have less energy coming in than you have energy going out, you're going to lose weight. Black and white, that's how it works, right? Now, some people feel like that's very untrue. I mean, you might even be listening right now and being like, I don't know, I've done the routine the way I was supposed to, and I've done the diet the way I'm supposed to, and I'm not getting the results that I'm supposed to, right? And so sometimes like this feels very untrue. But there's a lot of other stuff that's going to be at play. Maybe there's like a hormonal situation where your body is actually slowing your metabolism down in response, right? You're not producing enough thyroid hormone. Maybe it is you're not getting enough sleep, so then your body is producing massive amounts of cortisol, which is a very catabolic hormone that loves to burn up your muscle and actually store fat a little bit better. Maybe it is the fact that your job is very sedentary, or like maybe you're working out so hard in the gym, you come home exhausted. And this is going to be like a major bummer to hear, that you end up sitting around more throughout the rest of the day. And you actually burn less energy than you would have if you hadn't gone to the gym. How crazy is that, right? They've actually studied that, and we'll watch a video about it next mod. But like they have found that sometimes people will actually go to the gym, and then because they worked really hard at the gym, they're just kind of like wiped out afterwards. And they do like an hour of cardio after they did an hour of strength training, right? And then they come home and it's like that was a massive calorie burn in that time. But then their normal energy that they would have burned, like, I don't know, doing the dishes or maybe taking the stairs, or like, parking a little bit further away in a parking lot, instead they're like, oh, and they circle the lot a couple times until they find that spot that's like right next to the door. They take the elevator instead. They sit on the couch a little bit longer than they would have. And so their body finds a way to get that energy back into balance, right? So that's one of the reasons we have this type of question, right? Is because it can lead to very low energy expenditure. This is actually one of the reasons why like pedometers, like step counters that you wear on your wrist and stuff actually have been linked to effective like long-term weight loss. Not because it's like, again, a magic number, which is how it's marketed, and it drives me crazy. But they'll say like, you need your 10,000 steps a day. That's the number they picked. Fun fact, by the way, that number was picked at random in like the 70s. That was like when they came out with the first pedometers. And they literally were just like, how do we sell these things? Tell people they need a certain number of steps. And at random, they picked the number 10,000. So if you've ever heard that and been like, that's the magic thing, that's the way to achieve the weight loss, not necessarily, right? But I will give pedometers credit because it is a good way for you to, and I've noticed this in myself, I'll go to like a frisbee game, for instance, right? And I'll play really, really hard, and I'll try, I'll turn on like my GPS and stuff, and track my mileage, and then track how many calories I burned during the day. And it'll be like, bam, you burned this many calories. And so it's like, wow, I burned a lot today. And then I'll look at my steps, and it'll be like, let's say 12,000 steps, because I was sprinting around for a couple hours, right? And I come home, and it's like, man, I had 12,000 steps by noon. Imagine how many I've got at this point, and then I look down, it's like 13,000. And it's like, holy crap, I have not moved, after my game all day. So it is a good way to kind of like bring your attention to things. And it sort of like minimizes those errors that are sort of immeasurable that we don't tend to notice. But there's no magic number of steps to get in a day. It doesn't work that way. Anyway, sidetracked. Back into focus here. So this is one of the reasons why we asked this question, right? It makes it very easy for us to see, okay, like, yeah, you're probably doing your exercise program, you're probably doing your diet program, but throughout the day at your job, you're probably finding a way to burn less energy without realizing it, because our body is great at that, I mean, how many of you guys, honestly, actually, here's a good analogous situation. Let's take a little class survey here. How many of you guys actually track your spending specifically, like, and like look at your numbers? How many of you guys, like, actually, you know what, let's flip it. How many of you guys don't at all track your spending financially every day or week or month or whatever? How many of you guys? Because it was me for years. Anybody like not pay attention to it at all?
Me sometimes.
Yeah. Usually the version people do is they check to see if they have enough end of the month, and they're like, well, I got $20 left in the bank and I get paid tomorrow. I nailed it. You know what I mean? Right? Or they'll be like, yeah, for me, it used to be like, I just got to have $250 left in my checking account. And that was the cushion that I always wanted. So whenever I get near that, you could set up an alert, and it's like, hey, you're at the 250 alert. And it's like, ah, crap, and that's the version that exists. And yet consistently, it's hopefully, you're probably not getting overdraft fees every freaking month, So clearly you are naturally kind of finding a way to spend around the right amount of money, right? Your body does the same thing with energy. Your body will find ways. If you burn a lot of energy, it will naturally slow you down in the rest of the day. You don't burn enough energy, sometimes you'll feel really antsy. And then you're laying in bed and you're just like, it's supposed to be my bedtime, but I just have a lot of energy and I can't fall asleep, right? That's the opposite. That's your body being like, hey, like, we ate a lot of calories today, and like, I got all this energy. We need to do something, and it's all sort of subconscious, it's or unconscious rather. So that's one of the reasons we asked that question. It's a good way for us to kind of see what somebody's lifestyle looks like. We're going to also ask them, does your occupation require extended periods of repetitive movements? If our client's like a painter, for instance, or a construction worker, right? That's like, usually that means that they're using their dominant arm all freaking day. So chances are that the muscles that control that arm can get a little overactive. They can tighten up a little bit. So repetitive movements can lead to overactive, shortened muscles. Generally, that leads to like weakness in the rotator cuff, because certain muscles in the shoulder tighten up and then the other ones loosen up in response. Does your occupation require you to wear shoes with an elevated heel? That's kind of a weird one, but elevated heels put you into plantar flexion. I'll find a picture of this. See, it's going to show me weightlifting shoes. That's not really what I'm looking for. But yeah, I mean, you can see, obviously, arm into leg. That's funny. So there's, like, you can see this is major plantar flexion, right? Just happening passively all day. I mean, even just like a regular old like dress shoe. I mean, like, that's obviously plantar flexion. But imagine if you're just wearing, even like a lot of times when I say high heels, I think people are imagining what's happening here. I imagine people are probably picturing like, high heels like this, like stilettos, But like, I mean like men's dress shoes. I mean, look at, just as much as I mean like women's dress shoes, you know? Look at this. This is a big honking heel. And it's stiff and it's hard and it's just putting us in plantar flexion all day, you know? Honestly, even like a lot of like modern basketball shoes, you know, these freaking things, like some of them are kind of flat, but like, you know, and like that's like a lot of padding as well, which I'm not a fan of for other reasons. But like, if you look at the insole on the inside, a lot of times they'll pad the heel, because like theoretically, good Lord, look at that monstrosity. A lot of times, like the idea is like if you are running heel to toe, that impact is going to be painful. So if we put a bunch of foam, a bunch of cushion under there, you know, it should make the running injuries go down. And so we put more and more and more padding into shoes over the years, and yet we're seeing running injuries go up and up and up over the years. So clearly, you know, something's going on here. So elevated heels put us into plantar flexion, which reduces our dorsiflexion strength because it tightens up the calf muscles and loosens up the anterior and posterior tibialis. Does your occupation cause you a lot of mental anxiety or mental stress? You know, stress generally leads to shallow breathing patterns, breathing like this. See how much my shoulders are moving, right? So that often leads to secondary respiratory muscles tightening up. That's usually like your upper trapezius and your pectoralis major / minor. So those upper cross syndrome muscles can actually get tightened up just by being stressed out, you know? So all of those questions, which sometimes just seem like a little bit about somebody's life, actually have direct complications to not only like our lifestyle, but also like our posture, right? So then we have like our health history questionnaire. So we got questions that are related to like our client's lifestyle or maybe health history, right? Recreational activities, hobbies, things like that, right? So we might ask our client, hey, like, do you consume a lot of like caffeinated beverages, for instance, right? Caffeinated beverages oftentimes highly associated with like a lot of sugar, you know. You know, if we look at, let's look at like a Monster energy drink, nutrition facts. I do kind of think that like we definitely see less energy drink consumption nowadays, which is nice. But man, like for the last like, holy crap, there's a Bob Ross energy drink. You guys see this? That is hysterical. Positive energy drink. Oh, that's my favorite thing.
I like him.
Yeah, I love him too. My mom and I
Very
used
good.
to watch him when I was a little kid.
I learned actually from him how to draw.
Did you? I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
In my hallway, I have my great grandmother would watch Bob Ross and she would follow along and oil paint with him. So I have like a Florence Renfro Bob Ross painting that
Cool.
was like one of the things that I have to remember my great grandma by. So yeah, if you look at the friggin' nutrition facts here, right? So this Monster Energy drink's like 0 calories, you know, or for the most part, I mean, it's 10 calories, I guess, but you know, no sugar, because we go down here and we'll see erythritol. So that's a sugar alcohol. If we go up here to like sort of the standard ones, let's see here. So this actually said it's only got 90 calories and 18 grams of sugar. Oh, wait, that's only for 2 3/4 ounces, which a can of Monster Energy is definitely like 2 ounces is like a little bit more than a shot glass. You know, this is, I don't know, probably 16 ounces. So there's probably, so in this one, there are 4 servings per container. That's not 23 grams. That's not 90 calories. That's 360 calories. Right? And that's not 18 grams of sugar. That's 72 grams of sugar, right? So not awesome. Lots of sugar, right? So if my client tells me that they're drinking a lot of caffeinated beverages, tea, soda, energy drinks, things like that, it could be related to Maybe they feel like they don't have enough energy. Maybe they're bringing in an excessive amount of calories without realizing it. Again, I'm trying to learn some subjective information about my client in order to draw some conclusions and kind of figure out the why behind the what that I'm going to find later. The what is, oh, they're not so good at cardio. The what is, oh, they have like poor posture in their rotator cuff. The what is, oh, they're not so good at, upper body posture assessments, right? Like those are all the whats. The why is how we got there. And so that's what I'm going to find out in these, right? And then we also want to know a little bit about our clients' likes and dislikes. Remember, this is the first time you're meeting this person, and you are going to be trying to sell them a training package afterwards, which means, you're going to need to try to build as much rapport with the client as possible. So questions related to recreational activities, hobbies, things like that, right? I want to know, like, what do they like doing? Do they like to golf? Great. Let's design a program that makes them better at golf. Do they like, playing basketball? Have they ever wanted to learn how to dunk, or improve their vert? What kind of music do they like listening to? So I can put the right music on during their session. Little things like that are a really great way to like enhance your programs and enhance your time with the client. And then obviously we do also want to know the medical information, any information about any illnesses or injuries that they've had. You'll probably find a lot of that out with the PAR-Q, which I closed. I was like, where is it? You probably find out a lot about that with the PAR-Q, but you won't necessarily figure out like how much of a medication they're on. The PAR-Q is nothing but yes or no questions. We want it to be black and white. It's binary. Yes, no, no maybes, right? So the health history questionnaire is where we're going to figure out the specifics of those things, right? They say that they, tore, they had like a surgery recently, and we find out that it was for a rotator cuff, right? Or, they say that they have diabetes. How many years have they been dealing with it? What medications are they on? Are they on metformin? Are they on, do they have to take insulin, or is their diabetes not as severe? They can take, just a medication without needing necessarily insulin injections, like everybody's going to land in a different spot. And obviously medications can have different effects on our client as well, right? So, if we actually look, this is a table found in your textbook, effects of medications. So you'll find this little table in your book that looks like this. So if your client's on like a beta blocker, it lowers heart rate and blood pressure. That's usually prescribed for clients who have had various types of heart attacks. But calcium channel blockers can actually raise the heart rate while still lowering the blood pressure. So maybe they have a heart that's very weak and needs to contract more often, but they also have blood pressure problems, then their doctor's probably going to prescribe this one instead. So we got to use different, heart rate calculations, and we have to take that into account. You don't want to be the trainer who's like, all right, let's go ahead and get your heart rate between like here and here and you put them on a treadmill, because those are the numbers that you kind of calculated out. And then you put your client on a treadmill and you're like, you're doing great. And you're just slamming the plus button and like making it harder and harder and harder. Meanwhile, like their whole body is like struggling, but their heart rate's doing fine. That's because of the medication they're on. Like, we don't want to do that, because all of a sudden and they go flying off the back of the treadmill. So we want to find out about this stuff ahead of time. Now, again, this health history questionnaire, it's not a bajillion questions. You can see it's what, 3 pages, plus the PAR-Q. This should take you 10 minutes to get through, and I recommend doing this as an interview style. We'll talk about this in our next course, actually, when we get into our sales techniques and stuff. I do recommend doing this as an interview rather than just like giving it to the client to fill out. I will say, if you want to email the PAR-Q ahead of time and have them fill that out, and just bring that to the gym with them or email it back to you, you can do that. I personally don't recommend it for 2 reasons. Number one, most of the time your clients will not see your email. They will not care. They've never met you. They have no reason to do anything for you. So I'd say, like, definitely more than half the time. I'd say like 60 to 70% of the time, they won't even see it and definitely won't fill it out. But you can do it with the PAR-Q. But I really, really recommend, especially the health history questionnaire, taking the time to interview your client to learn this information rather than just being like, all right, take 5 minutes, fill this out for me. And then you're sitting, number one, you're sitting there. That's not good. Number two, it doesn't give you time to like do all that little like rapport building stuff, like if I ask, let's say I'm asking Cyrus, hey, do you have any past injuries or have you had any surgeries or anything like that? And he says yes, and it informs me of them. I can be like, oh, my grandmother had that, and then or something like that, and then I can, it pivots into a conversation, and now we're building rapport, which is another very valuable thing to do during this section. Now, now we're going to move into our objective information. What's really cool is this is the next place we're going to go. Immediately, we're going to start with physiologic assessments. So physiologic assessments are things like heart rate and blood pressure, right? Now, in order to figure out what your client's like resting heart rate is, you need to have your client at rest. Ideally, it would be in the morning before their feet hit the floor for the first time in the day. That's the true resting heart rate. But what are you gonna do? Sneak into your client's house? No, right? That'll probably raise their heart rate. So the way we gather a resting heart rate is we have our client sit for 5 minutes. Lucky for you, if you've done the PAR-Q and health history questionnaire, they're already sitting down. They're already at their resting heart rate. So that's why this is the very first thing that we're gonna do. But before we get into that, let's go back and talk about this category. So objective information is information that can be measured about our client. This is our number-based information, right? And the great thing about this is we can use all of this information to compare it to our clients weeks or months or years even later to track their progress, right? So physiologic assessments are going to be things like heart rate and blood pressure. Body composition assessments are going to be things like inches, body fat percentage, body weight. Cardiorespiratory assessments, those are going to be things like how well their heart rate performs under a certain amount of stress. Posture assessments are kind of what we've already been looking at. We kind of skipped forward to that section. Static or like under like squatting or pressing and pulling actions. How does their posture perform key movements of everyday life? And then performance assessments, which are very important in this mod, because those are going to be huge for athletes. Performance assessments are, like the NFL Combine is a really good example of that, or even just like sports, just tryouts, those are basically just a series of performance assessments, and we're looking for, the best athlete. So we're going to go ahead and start with physiologic assessments today, right? So physiologic assessments are going to be like our heart rate assessments, blood pressure, and things like that. So where to go? Did I not have an island? No. Lost my place. So we're gonna go ahead and start with our heart rate. Now, we did talk about this at the end of the, we actually just talked about this probably a week and a half ago. But physiologic assessments are great because they give us a lot of really valuable information directly about our client's cardiorespiratory system. So if we're measuring heart rate, NASM is typically going to recommend that you use the radial pulse. Your radius, right? This little bone in your forearm here. Your radial pulse is going to be on the thumb side of your wrist. And you can see there's, these are the blood vessels as they travel down your wrist, right? So you want to gather that from this little artery right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use 2 fingers in line with our thumb and index finger. So if you pinch those 2 together, we go up the line. That is where you're going to place those 2 fingers. And you should feel a little pulse there, right? Now, you might find that this, let's see if I can flex it properly. You might find that this little ligament kind of gets in the way there. And it can really kind of like block things and kind of screw that up. By the way, fun fact, actually, let's see here. How do I find this? Examples. kind of a fun one. For you guys who are at home, check this out. So go like this, pinch your pinky and index finger together, and then flex your finger. You will notice if you can see this really big, thick tendon there versus like over here, right? They look very, very, very different. So that is actually kind of an example of like the difference between like people who are slightly more evolved and people who are not. The theory here is actually that this was like the next step. This is like one of the things in like the evolutionary like chain that we were supposed to experience, and we were going to get rid of this. So what you'll find is some people have like one big thick band, and other people will have like one really thick one and one really thin one that you can't really see as well. And that's actually a sign. If you have two, you might be a little bit lower on the evolutionary chain than somebody who has just one big thick one. Because it's sort of what we call it vestigial. It's sort of like something that we don't really need anymore. We didn't really need two, we just need one big one. And it's kind of a fun one. And you can actually kind of see that there. I've got like two. You can actually see like, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see there's this one, and then there's the really thin one next door. So I'm a little bit lower on the chain there. But yeah, do that on yourself. But if you do have one big central thick one, it does sometimes get in the way. It makes it a little hard to use this pulse. So there's your fun, weird fact for the day, by the way. So you can also always use your carotid pulse, okay? And that one's going to be two fingers just to the side of the larynx there, or to the side of the trachea. I mean, there's a larynx, but trachea. And that's going to be right there. And that's your carotid pulse. That's one of the ones that are going up to the brain there. So what we're going to do is we're going to count the number of beats in 60 seconds in order to determine our client's resting heart rate. So we use a lot of different heart rates in our job. Okay. One of them, and I'm just going to go ahead and put all these up here. Resting heart rate is an individual's heart rate while they are at rest. Pretty simple to know that one, right? Let's make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see. 24. Let's go 36. That's huge. Great. So that's our resting heart rate. So that's what we want to get. And this is the number in 60 seconds. Okay, so our resting heart rate is the number of beats in 60 seconds. Why is this information so important? Well, we're going to use it for a couple reasons. Number one, just looking at the number directly, right? And by the way, we would be writing this down on our cardiorespiratory assessment. So if I click the cardio assessment here, we're going to use this for a couple different reasons. Number one, a lower resting heart rate directly translates to a strong heart. The lower your resting heart rate is, typically that's a sign of a stronger heart, you know? So again, like if I've got two 180-pound clients, both the same age, right? And I measure one of their resting heart rate, like for the most part, like they both have about the same amount of tissue to supply energy to, right? They're both about the same age, so their heart should be about the same strength to supply all that blood to those various tissues. But if I measure one of my clients' heart rates and it's like 85 beats per minute, and I measure the other client and their heart rate is like 60 beats per minute, I can pretty safely assume right off the bat that the client who's, you know, able to supply an entire body's worth of blood in 60 beats per minute is in a little bit better shape than the client who's, you know, supplying an entire body's worth of blood in 85 beats per minute, right? They're getting the same amount of work done with less beats, right? They're a higher they're a higher miles per gallon car. You know, they're a little more energy efficient. So this is one of the reasons why gathering resting heart rate is so important. So heart rate is the number of beats in 60 seconds. right? And typically we want to measure that at our radial pulse, although if we have to, we can also use the carotid. And once we identify it, we're going to count the number of beats in 60 seconds. Average resting heart rates for clients are going to be about 70 beats for most of our male clients and about 75 beats for our female clients. Women are going to be just 5 beats high. Just we see a slightly higher average for women. And that's just because like women tend to have like smaller bodies in general, so slightly smaller hearts in general. You know, there's so many like there's so much silly information about the body out there. Like, you know, I just gave you guys like a fun weird factoid. I don't actually we think that that's a sign of like we're not even sure. You know, it could just be genetics and there's some other reason at play there, but theoretically that's the idea. So I'm not gonna say that with like, you know, and it's not even important, but like there's so many weird factoids out there, but one of them that you'll hear is like your heart is about the size of like, you know, like your fists clasped together, right? They say that's about how big your heart is. That actually, for the most part, is relatively true. Guys who tend to have like slightly larger bodies and slightly larger hands, we also have a slightly larger heart. So it's able to beat a little bit less often. That's why we see a small discrepancy between the two sexes there. So that is our you know, first physiologic assessment that we're going to gather there. Now, I say more important. Another very important version of a heart rate that we're going to gather is our training heart rate. So if your resting heart rate is an individual's heart rate while they're at rest, our training heart rate is an individual's target heart rate. Okay, so this is the heart rate that we are aiming for. We can go ahead and put that down here. Oh no, I did 6. The heart rate our client is aiming for in order to experience specific physiologic adaptations. So last night I talked about this in the evening class. One of the things that came up is like how to sort of like close the gap between like a strong right arm and a strong left arm, or a strong right leg and a strong left leg, right? We often see a little bit of asymmetry in the body where sometimes we get a little bit overly developed in certain places and a little bit underdeveloped in other places. And we just get like a discrepancy between one leg and the other. And a lot of times people will try to do extra sets or they'll do extra reps on their weak arm, you know? So like, let's say my right arm is stronger than my left. So I'll start to do like extra reps or extra sets on my left arm to kind of catch up. Here's the problem with that. You are training in different energy systems when you do that. So you know, we produce energy in different ways, right? If we look at like just a very simple we look at the difference between what we call an anaerobic system versus an aerobic system. Aerobic systems are very good for like long endurance-based cardio, and anaerobic systems are very good for short duration sprinting, right? So if we look at this, right, this blue line is kind of representing like maximum effort sprinting. Did I say blue? Did I just say blue? This green line, this green line is representing like maximum effort, like super short duration sprinting, you know, like a 100-meter dash, 10 seconds long, you know. And then this blue line represents like typically what we use during sports, like, you know, a brief 20 to 30 second sprint followed by like, you know, medium recovery, and then like, you know, little sprints here and then a little bit of recovery, right? This is like the anaerobic system, or we think of like strength training, right? 12, maybe 6 to 12 reps, right? And then this gray line represents like long duration, 2 minutes or greater, running over like a long duration, right? So let's look at track and field as an example of this. The green line would be like a 100-meter dasher. The blue line would be like a 400-meter hurdler, right? The hurdles are going to kind of slow you down. 400 meters, you're probably going to end up sprinting for honestly, like 60 seconds. Like, what's the world record for the 400-meter hurdle? I'm gonna say probably like 50 seconds. No, probably anywhere from like 40 to 50 seconds. 45.94, right in the middle between 40 and 50. So yeah, like that's very much, we call that glycolysis. That's the blue line, right? And then like a marathoner, you know, somebody who's going to be running for literally hours, you know, that's this gray line here. So now if you think about like how fast this person can run at their top speed versus this person, very, very different athletes. So if you're doing extra reps at the end for your left arm, you are training that arm almost in this gray line. And then if you lifted relatively heavy in your strong arm, you kind of trained it in the blue line, right? And we'll go ahead and kind of just forget about the green for now. So you're training in different energy systems. So guess what? Like you're going to end up with different muscle fiber types in those two arms, and they're not going to get closer together. You're actually going to make the gap further apart. This is actually why what you want to do is you want to start with your weak arm and then just kind of match it on your strong arm. So if I did like, let's say I'm supposed to do somewhere between 10 and 12 reps, I start with my weak arm, I get to like, I'm trying to get to 12, I can't make it, so I get 11, right? And I'm like, ugh, I'm going to do 11 reps over here. No, I'm not pushing this arm as hard as I can, which is a key to strength training. We know we want to push ourselves towards failure. And no, I'm not doing that. But I'm still getting some strength benefits, and I'm giving this arm, which I did push towards failure, time to catch up. And eventually that gap is going to close. And then I can work on both of them evenly and I can gain my strength later. You know, it's a long-term approach rather than like a short-term approach. Now, why am I talking about this right now when it comes to heart rate stuff? Well, we have different heart rates that we are going to use to target different durations. I cannot work at maximum intensity if what I am training for is a marathon, right? Here's what we need to remember about like the word intensity. Trainers, all of us, actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do like the sneaky thing here. I'm gonna do what I normally do. All right, one of my new folks. This is a question for you directly. So Marjan, Desiree, or Eric, do you think a marathon is intense? Would you say the marathon is intense?
Yes.
So absolutely, it's hard, right? I mean, like you see those guys at the end of a marathon and they look like, you know, you put them through like a car wash, you know, like, and they got, and they come out the other side like, oh, you know, like they're all beat up, right? Here's the thing. I, as a trainer, actually would not call the marathon intense. I would call it hard. I would call it incredibly difficult, but intense for the rest of your life has a new definition. Intense is a percentage of your maximum effort. You see a 100-meter dasher at the end of their event, they look fine. You know, like they look like they're like, yeah, that was tough, you know, but like for the most part, like they're walking away fine. But weirdly, the 100-meter dash is way more intense than the marathon because they are using all of their muscle. They're using it in a very short duration, which is why they don't feel hard. So I would honestly, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think the marathon is harder than the 100-meter dash, but I think the 100-meter dash is intense and the marathon is not, right? Like walking is not very intense, but if you made me walk to New York, it's not easy. You know, like by the end of it, I'm gonna be like, my feet, I don't have feet. I wore them off. You know, like I'm gonna be completely wiped out. But it's not intense. You see the difference?
Yeah.
So just like, let's say doing 50 push-ups, that is gonna be hard, but it's not intense. Whereas like doing one really heavy bench press and then racking it, just one, is intense because it's a high percentage of my 1 rep max. So if I am sprinting and I'm going to get my heart rate really, really high in a very short duration, that is high intensity. So that's why we have different target heart rate zones. So for those of you who are familiar with this, NASM is going to break your heart rates into 3 zones. Other certifications out there, they're going to break it into other zones. If I look up like heart rate zones, for instance, we'll see a million different versions out there. Every certification has like a different take. Generally, there's like a lot of people break it into 5. And actually, you can kind of see that here. The first 2 aren't super relevant to exercise. You know, like this is like the 50 to 60% zone. That's like, I wouldn't call that exercise. I call it a warm up, you know, and that's actually where I warm my clients up. Then there's like 60 to 70%. That's like the fat burning zone. Then there's like the cardio endurance zone, like the marathon zone. It's like 70 to 80. And then there's like hardcore training zone. I don't know whose this is, but the hardcore zone. This is the blue. This aerobics with an X. Okay, I don't know what I looked up here, but whatever. This cardio endurance zone, this is like the gray line. This anaerobic zone is like the blue line. Yeah. And then this VO2 max zone, that's like the green line. This is the pure, very intense zone. So there's other ones out there, right? But generally, most people go by like 10% at a time. NASM didn't do that. NASM decided to break it into 3 zones instead. Actually, you can see there too. Here's another example, right? So 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. A lot of other people out there have taken that approach. You can see how many examples there are of like 5. NASM did this a little bit different. NASM broke it into 3 zones. They made the zones a little bit wider, but still by 10%, and they took all the irrelevant stuff out of it. So if we look at heart rate zones, according to NASM, we've got 3 key zones we're going to work in. We've got zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. This is going to mirror very well our OPT model. Remember how we talk about the staircase sometimes? We've got 3 levels, right? There's the stabilization, strength, and power levels. So the reason NASM went with 3 is because this mirrors the rest of their program design very, very, very well. So what are those 3 zones? Well, zone 1 is going to be a heart rate of like 65 to 75% maximum effort. So our target or training heart rate zones are what we're aiming for. That 65, I'm just going to make this a little clearer by moving this over here. Our 65 to 75% zone is like our endurance zone. If you keep your heart rate below 75%, you can probably go for a pretty long time. Like that's like a jog or a run, you know, over like a long duration. So NASM is going to say that the green zone in this case, we'll go ahead and mark this as, you know, we'll say zone 1 is going to be 65 to 75% heart rate max. So our training heart rate is going to be a percentage of our target heart rate, right? So that's 65 to 75% heart rate max. So this would be like the green zone, right? I'll put that in green here. And then we've got zone 2. That's going to be 76 to 85% heart rate max. And zone 3 is going to be 86 to 95% heart rate max. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say that this is like orange, or what do they do in the book? I think they say yellow. Yellow is going to be hard for you guys to see. And then this one's like red, you know? So those are our like 3 different zones there. Zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, right? So we are encouraging our clients to work at those percentages. Now, you might be thinking, well, how do I figure out, you know, what those numbers are actually meant to be? And there's going to be a couple different formulas here. These are percentages. The percentages of what? They're a percentage of the max heart rate. Okay, so heart rate max is going to be basically the highest version or the highest intensity theoretically that you can go, and it's simply based on your age. Okay, so our next type of heart rate we got to talk about is max heart rate. And this is going to be an estimation of somebody's like highest heart rate. Okay. So it's an estimation of a client's heart rate maximum based on their age. Okay, so we do base this on their age, and that formula is going to be 220 minus their age equals heart rate max. So all of my for those of you who have been with me for a while, you guys will recognize that formula. All of you that are new, this needs to be memorized. This right here is key information. They will ask you 100% guaranteed on your test some version of a question related to what the heart rate max is. So that might be a question that is like, which of the following best describes the heart rate max? And it would be like an individual's target heart rate, or an individual's heart rate at rest, or an individual's an estimation of someone's maximum effort. There's the answer, right? Like you might get a question like that, or they'll say, which of the following is the best way to estimate an individual's heart rate max? And you'll need to recognize the format, 220 minus their age, right? So that is a key formula to get memorized. You don't have to do any math on your test. They're not going to do that to you. They're not going to say, your client's 40 years old, what is their heart rate max? They won't even do that. That's basic math. And it'd be like, okay, 40, 220 minus 40, it's 180. They won't do that. Thank God. But they may ask you any questions. You need to be able to spot this formula in a crowd and recognize it. There is another formula out there, by the way, that is a little bit more popular nowadays. It's called the regression formula. It's the same concept, but it's 208 minus 70% of your age. I do find this to be very accurate, actually. But like a 40-year-old client is where they actually would be the same. But this is generally a little bit better for athletes, and this is general. The rule of thumb in the industry is like, this is generally a little bit better for athletes, and this is better for the average everyday client. Now, obviously, you hear that and you might be thinking, okay, so if I wanted to calculate, let's say, nope, Desiree, I'm putting you on blast only because you're the only one who's not on mute. How old are you, Desiree?
24.
24. So I can figure out your heart rate max pretty easily. It would be 220 minus 24, 196. So now, if I want to figure out your heart rate zones, Desiree, if I was training you for a marathoner, I would say, all right, 196 times 65%. That's 127. And then 196 times 75%, that's 147. So Desiree, if I wanted you to get better at marathoning, I would say, all right, go for a run, wear a heart rate monitor, or just track your heart rate occasionally. I want you to never get your heart rate below 127. I don't want you to get your heart rate anywhere above 147. And there we go. There's how we did target heart rates. Now, some of you might be listening to this and thinking, okay, it's pretty good. Oh, actually, really quickly. So we're gonna use these formulas to multiply it by our heart rate max to get our desired intensity, just like we said. So if the goal is to have our client at at zone 1, 65 to 75%, and our client is 33, 220 minus 33 is 187. So I multiply 187 times 65%, and I do it times 75%. There's my zone, just like we did with Desiree. 122 to 140 for this client. So you can see the numbers are a little bit lower for the client who's a little bit older. Now, you're probably thinking, that doesn't seem very accurate, right? It doesn't seem like that's going to be a very accurate heart rate experience, right? Because like, Desiree, you're in pretty good shape, What about somebody who's also, oh shoot, 20, 24, 23? 24. Sorry. What about somebody else who's 24 who has never exercised before? Or what about somebody who's 24 who has been like training for the Olympics their entire life? You know, what about those people? How do we account for those people? Well, that's where we come back to this idea of the resting heart rate. So let's take a look back at our assessment sheet here that I got pulled up all the way over here, right? So if we gathered our client's resting heart rate and we gathered our client's heart rate max by doing a little bit of fancy math, now I can estimate what my client's target heart rate is and estimate what my client's target heart rate zones are. And I can take into account their individual fitness level by looking at their resting heart rate. And the way that we do that is through what's called the Karvanen formula. Okay, so the Karvanen formula, nope, I need my PowerPoint. There it is a much more complicated formula. So we're gonna do a little bit of math here, right? But this, and I'll put the definition over here in our little thing that we're making. And that's, you know what, I really should call this the max heart rate formula too. Oh boy. I mean, well, it is just the heart rate max. So here's the Karvanen formula. This is also more commonly referred to as the heart rate reserve formula. And what this is this is going to be, this calculates target heart rate zones based on the difference between the heart rate max and the heart rate rest. So now if we take into account our client's resting heart rate, we know that like a lower resting heart rate means that somebody's in better shape. Let's say I've got two Desirees, one in class here who obviously exercises regularly, and another one who has never exercised a day in her life, right? And you know, she's the evil clone. And I calculate both of their heart rates. They're going to be very different, right? Because one exercises and has like developed more mitochondria in the cells, more hemoglobin, you know, more type 1 muscle fibers, lots of like characteristics internally that we can't really see, right? And so this Desiree is probably going to have a much lower resting heart rate than evil clone, right? So now we take into account their target heart rates. And so this formula is going to be a little bit more complicated. This is going to be, and we got to use brackets now. Heart rate max minus heart rate rest. So we need both of those first. Then we multiply it by our intensity times you know, our desired intensity, right? So that desired intensity would be 65%, 75%, 76 to 85%, right? It would be these zones here, right? So times our desired intensity, right? And then we got to add the resting heart rate back on at the very end. So because we took the heart rate rest out, we got to slap it back on at the end. So now the formula obviously got a little bit more complicated. Desiree, do you happen to know your resting heart rate? Just out of curiosity.
I don't.
No problem. So let's just go ahead and use two different examples. All right. So let's say your resting heart rate is 60 beats per minute, right? So what we would do is we would take your max heart rate, which we remember from before is 196, and we subtract 60 beats per minute, right? Hit enter. So now it's 136. So now I've taken that number out. Now I can multiply it by those zones. So times 65%. I'll do it again. 196 minus 60 times 75%. So that's 102. And then I got to put the resting heart rate back in. So plus add the 60 back at the end of the formula because I took it out. So now, remember how our heart rate zone was like, what was it, 127 to 137 the last time? Now it's 148 to 162 because you're in pretty good shape in our assumption here, right? So that is where, and look at how much smaller it is. 127 to 140, that was 20 beats, right? Now it's 14 beats. So the zone actually got smaller and more accurate and more specific to you. And that's why we like the Carvenin formula the best. Now, are you guys going to have to do this math on your test? Definitely not. Are you going to have to do this math in life with your client? Also, probably not. What you're going to probably do is you're probably going to go like this: Carvenin calculator. And you're going to go to Google. For me, I've literally, this briancalkins.net, or I guess it is .com. This website has been around literally since I graduated. I have been using this website since 2006. 2006, 2008. I graduated high school in 2006. I started training in 2008. So let's use our 33-year-old client as an example, and say their resting heart rate is 75 beats per minute. And I hit calculate here. So our old 65 to 75% used to be 122 to 140, right? So 122 to 140 here. Now it's 148 to 159. That is much more accurate. And look at like the range, right? That's a range of 18 beats. And this one is a range of 11 beats. So the zone got smaller and more accurate. Does that make sense, everybody? I feel pretty clear on that.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. So the zone gets smaller, right? Because it gets more accurate to the person because I took into account their resting heart rate. That's really the advantage to the Carvenin zone, right? So like Arlene, if I told you to go to the gym and I'm trying to make you build strength, right? And I was like, yeah, I want you to do somewhere between like 6 and 20 reps. Right? Those are very different, but if I gave you like a very narrow range, I want you to do somewhere between 10 and 12 reps, you're going to be much more accurate every time you go to the gym. Because sometimes you're doing 6, sometimes you're doing 8, sometimes you're doing 12, sometimes you're doing 20. Like that's way too big of a range. You're going to get a different workout every time. And some days are going to be better than others. You're going to be less accurate, right? But if I give you a much more narrow range, it makes it easy for me to target specifically what it is I am trying to target. So if I'm trying to target your endurance, I want to get you between 65 and 75%. If I want to build your athleticism for like being able to like play like tennis, for instance, right? Like tennis, you got to be on the court for a little while. Sometimes those volleys go a long time. Or actually, like tennis, maybe. I mean, yeah, tennis is a good example. But like a field sport, playing pickup basketball, right? You need to be able to sprint, but you also need to have enough endurance to get through a game. So this zone 2 is going to be really valuable, 76 to 85%. Or if I want you to be able to like sprint and then you get plenty of time to recover, right? That's 86. I want you at like a very high percentage. And if I want to make sure that it's accurate to you and not just like anybody who shares an age with you, which is a lot of people in the world, right? I need to use like your resting heart rate to make it much more accurate. And that's where the Carvenin formula becomes really, really, really valuable. It caters it specifically to the client individually. But obviously the math is a little fancier. So I really recommend, they're in the App Store, in fact, NASM has its own app, like the NASM Edge app, I think is what it's called. And you just punch in your client's information. So you're going to start by gathering their resting heart rate while they're still sitting. You just got done doing your interview. First thing you're going to do, walk around the desk. Don't let them get up. Keep them in their chair. Get their resting heart rate. Write it down. Then estimate their heart rate max, which is always going to be 220 minus their age. And then you've got all the information you need to punch it into the Carvenin calculator. Heart rate max minus heart rate rest times the intensity, and then add the heart rate rest back on at the end. So let's say we look at our 33-year-old client as an example here. Originally, their heart rate zones were this. There's our 65 to 75. actually here. So here's a little target heart rate zones. If we're looking at the Carvenin formula versus the heart rate max formula, right? Center that and it'll look like a real chart. So let's say my client's 33 with a heart rate rest of 75. So we'll put that up here. Bob Smith, right? So Bob Smith's resting heart rate, or let's say Bob Smith's max heart rate, or let's do their age first. So their age is 33. Their resting heart rate is 75 beats per minute. Okay, so there's our client Bob, right? So we'll put the heart rate max formula over here. And here are his zones. Okay, so his zone 1 is going to be 122 to 140 beats per minute. His zone 2 is going to be 141 to 159 beats per minute. And his zone 3 is going to be 160 to 178 beats per minute. Versus the Carvenin version, which will be 148 to 159. Zone 2 will be 160 to 170. And zone 3 will be 171 to 181. And those are sort of our individual differences there. Does that make sense now? Is that a little bit clear, seeing how these kind of work versus each other? It's just a much more narrow range. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into blood pressure here. Blood pressure, this is a relatively easy assessment. We already kind of talked about this one, but honestly, guys, I recommend just getting an electric blood pressure cuff. Slap it on your client. If you find that their blood pressure is like really high, so if it's like 180 or higher that day on the systolic pressure, that's the top number, it's probably not even safe to exercise that day. That just shows that like they're experiencing pressure problems, which means they might pass out in the middle of the workout, which we definitely don't want to see. But just to remember like what blood pressure is, you know, this is the amount of pressure in your blood vessels at any given time, right? Ideally, that pressure should be about 120 units of pressure over about 80 units of pressure. And that top number is representing systole, that's when your heart contracts, and the bottom number represents diastole, that's when your heart relaxes. So obviously the pressure is going to be high when your heart's squeezing, and the pressure is going to be low when the heart is relaxing. Normally, we want blood pressure to be 120 or below, over 80 or below. And if we can get our, you know, as long as those numbers are around that, that's normal blood pressure. If it's at 140 over 90, that's actually showing hypertension. That's high blood pressure. And this should be taken at rest as well. You know, like your blood pressure will go as high as like 300 while you're in the middle of a deadlift, you know, because it's a very high pressure exercise. So we're not measuring this while we're exercising. We're talking about like their passive, relaxed blood pressure. We don't want it to be higher than 140/90. If it is, that shows that our client has high blood pressure. So take your client's blood pressure when they come in, you know, during their first session, and, you know, track it over time. The stronger your client's heart gets and the more control they get over their blood vessels, the lower their blood pressure is going to go, you know. Last time I checked my blood pressure, it was like, I think it was like 106 over like 70 something. I have relatively low blood pressure, you know, and that's, I'm not saying that that's like the best indicator of cardiovascular health, but hopefully that indicates that, like, you know, my blood pressure is, you know, the pressure in my blood vessels, there's not like anything clogging them up, you know, and that's actually relatively low. And I've always had like relatively low blood pressure, which is actually sometimes not so great. If I'm really relaxed and I'm like, you know, when you're sitting on the couch and you're like, okay, and you jump up, sometimes like my body's like not ready to do that, and it'll feel like I'm like passing out. And it's like there wasn't enough pressure to keep blood moving. So sometimes it can actually be a little detrimental. But ideally 120/80, that's the number that we're aiming for. That's sort of the ideal pressure there. And honestly, like, easiest thing is just to get electric blood pressure cuff. Just buy one of these. I know we gave you guys the manual ones, but those things are such a pain in the butt to use. These things are $30. Where are they? Come on, that's like $60 ones. They're not. They're like $30. Shopping. $20. That's a wrist one. I actually don't love the wrist ones. There we go. $20. So I recommend getting one of those and just using that with your clients. Okay, any questions on heart rate or blood pressure before we move into some of the body composition stuff?
No, thank you.
All righty. Okay, so body composition assessments. This is about your clients' like body fat percentage or, you know, body weight, things like that, right? So this is obviously going to have to do with, like, you know, what your client sort of like looks like externally, right? So there's a lot of different ways to test body fat percentage. There is the, you know, first off, definition wise, your percent body fat is the amount of fat mass that they have versus their overall body mass. So if they weigh 200 pounds and you find that they have like 20% body fat, right, that's going to indicate that they have 40 pounds of fat mass and 160 pounds of lean mass, right? So 40 divided by 160. Oh, that's, whoops, that's not true then. 200 7.2. What have I done wrong here? That's 20% body fat. I must have used the wrong number, but this is why I don't teach math. So there's a couple different ways to calculate this out. There are skin fold measurements out there. So skin fold measurements, that's where you have the little body fat caliper, the little pincher. And basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna use various different formulas out there. There's different ones. You can see here if we go to the body composition assessment, and we go to skin fold measurements down here, you're gonna wanna choose one of the protocols that are in your textbook. I recommend the Dernan formula. It's a 4-site method. It's the easiest one to use. But there's other ones out there. There's the Jackson-Pollock version. There's all kinds of them out there. But the Dernan Womersley formula, I like it the best because it's just 4 sites. You know, you're going to pinch the biceps, triceps, just below the scapula. So that's subscapular. And then you're going to do the iliac crest, right? So So like I said, there are other ones out there. Like there's the Jackson and Pollock. That's a 3-site method. That one is going to be like you're going to go actually like pec minor, and then iliac crest, and then thigh. I don't like that one just because like I find that like if I've got a brand new client, the thigh is a pretty uncomfortable place to get. There's a 7-site method where you do all of them. You know, you're kind of putting Dernan and Jackson Pollock 3-site together. This is the one I like. It's biceps, triceps, subscapular. So you're going to pinch just below the scapula, and iliac crest right there on the stomach, right? So that's just above that little like bony knob that we were looking at yesterday for the hip flexor complex, right? And what you do is you just add all the numbers together, and then you're going to look on a chart and look at their age, and you're going to measure the two together, right? So let's say you add all the numbers up, and it comes out to, there we go. Ooh, this is kind of hard to see, but let's say that's the youth one. God dang it. Give me the adult one. And give me one that I can read. There we go. Good Lord. All right. So let's say you got a female client. You add all, they're 35 years old, right? So that's going to put them between 33 and 37. You add all the numbers up and it comes out to 45 millimeters, right? 10 millimeters here, 10 millimeters here, 15 millimeters there, and 10 millimeters, 45 millimeters altogether, right? So that's putting them between 44 and 46. And we go over to their age. So they have about 19% body fat, which is pretty good, right? And that's how we use it, right? So you add them all up, go to their age, add them all up, and it will tell you what their body fat percentage is. Fairly accurate, by the way. And we'll practice this in school when we meet up next time. We'll get a chance to kind of look at this. But it's a 4-site method, right? Biceps halfway between the shoulder and elbow, triceps halfway between the shoulder and elbow. Those are vertical folds, by the way. You can see that here. You want to make sure that you're using the vertical version. Don't go horizontal, pinch vertically, okay? Now the subscapular, just below the shoulder blade, that's a 45-degree fold, okay? So basically what I like to do is I like to kind of angle it 45 degrees and just drag my finger right off their scapula and get that pinch there. And then iliac crest, right just above that knob on the pelvis there. Now, when you're doing this, by the way, you will notice you want to do a pinch with your fingers, and then you are going to pinch with the caliper what you have a hold of, okay? Don't just pinch your client directly, otherwise you'll end up doing this, and then you will drag it off at the end, which is not going to feel great. So pretty accurate, honestly, guys. It works pretty darn well. Add the 4 sides together, look at the table that's in your textbook, and it will tell you your body fat percentage. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can do what is much more popular nowadays, which is the bioelectric impedance. You might even have one of these in your home. You might have like you might have a bioelectric impedance scale, which is basically you're going to stand on the scale and it will basically run an electric pulse through the body and estimate your body fat percentage. So it's running an electric current from point A to point B. Just as a science, we know that electricity travels through water very fast. And any of the only tissue in your body that doesn't have like a lot of water in it is your body fat. Most of that is lipids. It's oil versus water, right? So if that electricity travels very slowly, that indicates a higher body fat percentage. If it travels very quickly, it represents a lower body fat percentage because it's traveling through water instead of fat. So that's how that works if you were ever wondering. But bioelectric impedance is just an electric current. You can see how this is written, by the way, if it ever is a homework question. It measures body fat by sending an insensible electric current through the body, and then measures how quickly that current travels. And then there's hydrostatic weighing out there. This is another one. We know how much body fat weighs underwater, and we know how much it weighs on land. So if I weigh you on land and then I weigh you on underwater, and the difference is really big, like it's a huge difference between the two, that indicates a higher body fat percentage. And if the difference is very small, that indicates a lower body fat percentage. That's probably the most accurate, by the way, out of all body fat testing, but it is also the least impractical, least practical. It's very difficult to do in like a gym, because you need a giant water tank and your client has to dry off. So honestly, 9 out of 10 times, guys, you're going to use the little body fat testers. You're going to grab the little electric prods. It's going to zap you. You're not going to feel it. Some people can. I've had clients tell me they're like, they can feel the current before. I don't know if that's like placebo or if they can really actually feel it. But it doesn't hurt if you're worried about the electricity, But yeah, it's going to run it from point A to point B, and it's going to estimate body fat percentage. This is a really good assessment. A lot of times if I do the electric impedance, I skip this entirely and I go down here and I literally just write what their body fat percentage is. And I'm tracking that over time. My client starts at 25%, they go down to 24%, 23, 22, right? And we're just tracking their progress over time. Same thing is true for circumference measurements. These are going to be used to measure your body girth. And so like the idea here is that we are trying to figure out how much, what the circumference like width is. And that will change over time. If they're trying to put on muscle mass, we want those numbers to go up. If they're trying to lose fat mass, we want those numbers to go down, right? So big thing here, guys, is to make sure that you're being as consistent as possible. Try not to pull too hard or too soft, because that will alter the inches. We want consistency. So you want to make sure that you're measuring in the same site, which is why for the neck, we're going to go right along the Adam's apple. For the chest, we are going to go at the first apparent flattening of the chest. So like just wherever the chest flattens out, that's where we're going to measure it. If there is no apparent flattening, which in most of our male clients there won't be, you're just going to go right along the nipple line. For our waist, you want to go at the, and this is important, narrowest part of the waist. And if there is no narrowing, then you're just going to go directly on the belly button. For the hips, we go at the widest portion of the hips, right there along the buttocks. And then thigh, we're going to do 10 inches above the patella. I will say not every client is going to have 10 inches of patella. If you have a client that's a little bit shorter, that might be difficult. So traditionally, we go 10 inches above the kneecap. If they don't have 10 inches above the kneecap, just pick a different number, 6 inches, 4 inches, whatever you want to pick, but you're just tracking it over time. And then the calf, we do the widest circumference of the calf. Now I said the most important one is the hips and the waist, right? Again, always the widest part of the hips. And yeah, I did this in the wrong order. That is still true. The narrowest part of the waist and the widest part of the hips. We do it in that order because we're going to divide the hip measurement by the waist measurement. So there is a correlation between like body fat. If we look at like the ratio of like body fat, we know that like there is more heart disease associated with like an apple-based shape versus like a pear-based shape. This is actually considered less of a health risk, weirdly enough. We're not 100% certain why. We think that this is one of the reasons why men tend to die of heart disease more often than women do, because most women tend to hold most of their body weight below the waist, and men tend to hold most of their body weight in the waist. We think that that's because there's just a lot of body fat near like essential organs, but we actually don't really fully understand why. But this is a number that we can track. So that's your waist to hip ratio. So if your client has like a waist ratio of, let's say 33 inches, right? And they have a hip ratio of, we'll say 42 inches. So 33 divided by 42 gives us a ratio of 0.78. That's a pretty good ratio. That's less than 0.8 for our female clients, and it's way less for our male clients. like less than 0.95, that would put us at a decreased health risk. So let's say we have a client who falls into like a healthy waist to hip ratio, and they might have like, you know, an excessively high body fat percentage. You know, maybe they end up in an overweight category for a body fat percentage. That could indicate that that's like, hey, like your body fat percentage is outside of normal ranges, but like your blood pressure is good, your resting heart rate is good, and your waist to hip ratio is falling in a good spot. I don't think that like body fat is a big issue for you, you know, even if it is like at a high rate. Now, that doesn't mean that like they might not have like a weight loss goal. It just shows us that like in terms of like health risks, this is a little bit of a lower thing. So ideally we want it to be 0.8 or less for females and 0.95 or less for males. The reason those numbers are different, by the way, is because women are going to have a wider pelvis. So the math has to kind of reflect that. The bone is actually just larger. So those numbers are a little bit different. But that is where we're sort of looking at like where the fat is sort of held. This is photoshopped, but you can kind of see like this would be considered like the difference between the two versus like this, where like her hips didn't stay, you know, her hips are the same, but like they photoshopped it to make it look a little bit different there. That is a slightly increased, you know, we see a slightly increased risk of you know, disease and mortality in excessively abdominal fat. Diabetes, heart disease, things like that. And then lastly, the one we're going to look at is BMI. This is another one. We do know that like a BMI exceeding 25 is considered an increased risk of health. I don't think this is the most important information personally, but you guys will need to recognize this formula as well on your tests. It is going to be your client's weight in kilograms divided by their heights in meters squared. So I do want you guys to have that formula memorized because you'll need to be able to recognize it. So body mass index, know the definition. It's a calculation of client's height versus their weight to estimate body composition. And then know the formula, weight in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. I know we live in the US where we do the silly American formula, but that's not the test question. The test question will always be the scientific version, kilograms divided by height in meters squared, okay? If it's above 25, we consider that to be overweight. If it's above 30, we consider that to be obese. If it is below 18 and a half, 18.5, that is considered underweight. All of those are increased risk of health diseases. So those are all of our body composition assessments. That's all of them. Any questions on those guys? Nothing? Oh wait. Marjan, I saw you. Oh, there you go. There you go. What was that?
Confused.
What do you mean you're confused? On what?
No. I'm just saying, like, I got exactly what's going on, but I need to, like, definitely I have to go. So maybe I'm just gonna join for evening too, because it's just too much information.
Okay, that's fair. We're gonna practice these, by the way, in person next time.
Okay.
You're gonna do these, so we'll experience them, and that will, you know, it will feel a lot of this stuff is kind of hard to learn over a Zoom call. But for now, just remember the definitions, and you'll see like what the questions look like when you look at homework, you know, number 3, which
Yeah.
skipping forward on me.
Oh my God.
But yeah, we'll get a chance to like practice these, especially like the circumference measurement stuff. Like that stuff's like really hard to learn if you don't practice it.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The big takeaways, honestly, guys, start getting the formulas in your head, and then start remembering like why they're important. Like I said, the reason we look at like circumference measurements is like we know there's a correlation between abdominal fat. That's what we're worried about. So like those like whys, why we're measuring these things, pay attention to that, and the rest of it will fall into place. That's the stuff you want to pay attention to. Okay, we got 2 more assessments to look at. This is the easy stuff. It's not so bad. So cardio assessments. We looked at all this formula stuff earlier, right? We calculated out what our clients' zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3 is. So the only thing we got to determine now is which zone to give them. You know, which cardio zone should I give my client? You know, do they qualify? Should I make my client sprint and take them up to 95% of their heart rate max? What if that gives them a heart attack? You know, how do I know how easy or how hard to make the cardio? Well, I'm going to give them a performance assessment. I'm going to give them a cardiorespiratory assessment. So this gives us information about the cardiovascular starting point. There's going to be 2 main tests we're going to use. One of them is going to be the YMCA 3-minute step test. So what is the YMCA step test? Well, it's a very, very, very simple cardiorespiratory assessment where we make our client step for 3 minutes onto a 12-inch step, and we measure how well they perform. So this is how it works.
YMCA step. What is the YMCA step test, and how can we use it to assess our cardiorespiratory fitness? I'll answer those questions in today's Simple Truth Fitness Minute. First, don't do this test unless you have clearance from your physician that it's safe to do so. The YMCA step test is a measure of cardiorespiratory fitness based on how quickly your heart rate returns to normal after exercise. It consists of 3 minutes of stepping up and down on a 12-inch step at 96 steps per minute. Search YouTube for metronome 96 beats per minute for the right pace. At 3 minutes, you stop and immediately sit down. And for accurate results, within 5 seconds, start taking your pulse at the wrist or carotid for 1 full minute. The simple truth is the YMCA step test is an easy, quick way to measure your cardiorespiratory fitness. More details, including what to do with your measured heart rate, are provided in the text and links. I'm David Greenwald, and that's today's Simple Truth Fitness Minute.
1 minute explanation. This guy nailed it. So what we are going to do is we are going to give every client who ever takes this assessment the same amount of stress. We are going to give every client who ever takes this assessment a 12-inch step. They're going to step at 96 steps per minute. A Google metronome here. And any client who ever takes this assessment is also going to go for 3 minutes in length, which means 96 times 3, anybody who's ever done this has stepped 288 times, 12 inches. So they stepped 3,456 inches. Everybody who's ever done it. I control all those variables, right? So I put my client on the step, and it's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, up, up, down, down. I'm going to go for 3 minutes straight. Then I'm going to turn, sit, and we're going to take our client's heart rate. We are going to measure it for a full 60 seconds. This is really important, guys. Do not do 15 seconds times 4, 30 seconds times 2, 20 seconds times 3. Don't do anything like that. You can normally do that during a workout. You can normally do that during a resting heart rate. That's fine. But this test is about how their heart rate recovers over 1 minute. So again, if I'm trying to measure how well my client performs, right? It's going to determine, and this is the definition, it's going to determine their target zone based on a bout of 3 minute stair climbing. 3 minutes, 24 steps per minute, that's 96 touches. That's why the metronome's 96. 12-inch step, 3 minutes in length. When you're done, have them sit, take their recovery pulse over 60 seconds. Do not use a modified formula. If you do 15 seconds times 4, you're not calculating what their heart rate is at the end of the 60 seconds. You're only counting it for that first 15 seconds, right? So their heart rate's going to go like this. It's going to slow down over time. we want to measure how fast their heart rate slows down. If their heart's like this, holy crap, that was a fast recovery, right? But if it's like you're 60 seconds, you're done, and your client's still just like, they're still breathing really hard. Oh, they did not do great. So we look at this, and we're going to look in a chart and figure out how well they scored. Let's say my client is like a female client, 33 years old, right? So here's the women's table up top. They're 33, so that puts them between 26 and 35, and their pulse recovered to 112 beats, right? So that actually puts them below, puts them right between these two, between 100, it puts them between average and below average. So if my client did average or below average, they're going to qualify for zone 1. So if I actually look at my little table here, did I close the thing? How did I close the thing? My cardiorespiratory assessment, and I had them do the YMCA step test, and they scored below average or average, right? That's going to put them in zone 1. So this person's going to qualify right here. So all those numbers that I calculated out earlier, I'm going to give her these numbers, right? Let's look at our client example from here, right? So let's say it's Bob Smith. He's 33 years old, right? And Bob recovered to 116 beats, right? So we go to Bob. He's, how's Bob? 33. So 33, he recovered to 116. Oh, that puts him in the poor category. So Bob is, if I use the heart rate max formula, I'm not sure which, formula I would use. I would probably use the Carvening because that's the one that I find to be the most accurate. But Bob's going to get zone 1 for his cardio workouts. I just figured out how I'm going to give Bob his cardio routine. I just wrote it, right? Step 1, Bob, I want you to get on the spin bike. I want you to go for 20 minutes, somewhere between 140. If your heart rate drops below 148, I need you to crank up that dial. If your heart rate gets above 149, I need you to lower that dial, right? That's it. There's Bob's cardio, right? Now, if Bob did really great, let's say his heart rate recovered to 88 beats by the end of the frickin' test, he's going to be a phenom. That puts him in the good category here, good to above average, right? So he's probably going to qualify for zone 2. And if he recovered to like 72 beats, that wasn't even exercise for Bob. Bob killed it, right? So he got in the excellent category. I'm going to give him a zone 3 workout. So that's how I use these target heart rate zones, right? I take the information that I gathered earlier, and then I determine which version of a routine I'm going to give him based on how well he scores in my cardiorespiratory assessments, okay? So that's the YMCA step test. If they did poor or fair, they qualify for zone 1. If they did average or good, they qualify for zone 2. And if they did very good, which I think is listed as excellent here. Yeah, excellent instead of very good. They're going to qualify for zone 3. And the same thing is true for my next assessment, the Rockport walk test. Maybe you got a client. Now here's the thing. I like the YMCA step test the best because it's 3 minutes. How long is my assessment? It's 4 minutes long. 3 minutes of stepping, 1 minute of counting their pulse. That is easy, right? Done and done. But not everybody can handle,
for accurate
12-inch step like that. Could be kind of high impact for some people if they have bad knees, arthritis, anything like that. So instead, we can do the Rockport walk test. A little bit different here. Here's another.
Like a lot of people, the COVID-20 got a hold of me. 320 was the highest I ever hit while the brew.
My name is Holly Del Rosso. I'm at the Works Personal Training Studio in New York City, and this is Rockport Fitness Test Tips. The Rockport Fitness Test is a great test for beginning athletes. If you've never worked out in your life or you're a beginner at cardiorespiratory training, this is for you. This is going to show you your VO2 max, which is how cardiovascularly fit you are. All you need is a stopwatch, a pen and paper, and you need to find out what your target heart rate is. and you can go on a track or you can hop on a treadmill. Come with me and let's get started. Make sure you guys know your target heart rate in order to perform the Rockport fitness test. Your target heart rate is going to tell you what your VO2 max is, which is what we're measuring in this test. Get your stopwatch ready. You could be on the track or on a treadmill. If you're on a treadmill, get to a pace where you feel like it's pretty challenging. 3.0 or 3.5 should be great for most individuals. Once you hit the mile mark, you're gonna look at how long it took you to get there, and you're gonna take your heart rate. You're gonna check your heart rate on your carotid artery. If you don't have a heart rate monitor, this is the best way to do it. Count to 6 and count how many beats in that 6 seconds and add a 0 to that number.
So you'll notice there's kind of a difference in how we do this. So she's going to walk 1 mile. Here's the information we need. We need to know our client's age. We need to know how long it took them to walk the mile. We need to know what their heart rate is the second the test is over. So this is not a recovery pulse. Like in the 3-minute step test, we were measuring the recovery pulse over 60 seconds. This one, that's not how this test works. This test, I want to know what their heart rate is the very second it's over. So 6 seconds multiplied by 10, giving me 60 seconds, right? Is going to be the best way to get that. So just right in that moment, or have them wear a heart rate monitor. It will tell you directly what their heart rate is the second the test is over. Yeah, question.
Well, this was in our homework. Just
Which one?
the cardiovascular test is one of the homework question.
Which one?
The Rockport walk test.
Sorry. So I'm sorry. Which homework? Which homework?
Oh, homework 3.
Homework 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I thought we need a little break, so that's why.
Okay. As a reminder, homework 3 goes out tomorrow.
I know.
Okay.
No, but
That's good. I'm glad I wasn't in homework 1 or 2.
And also, I was gonna say, Brad, everything that you just said today, the only thing it came to the homework, it was just the 220.
Minus the age.
Yeah, minus the age. That's it.
So as a reminder, guys, this is the dangers of looking ahead in your homeworks. I mean, it's nice because you kind of know what's coming. But yeah, don't do homework 3 or 4 until they've been assigned, because yeah, we're going to talk about them in class. But yes, this will be on your homework that goes out tomorrow.
Okay.
So let's finish. Let me finish explaining how this test works, and then we can talk about stuff like that. Okay, so remember, like what she said, what's important here is it's important to know what your pulse is the second the test is over as you hit 1 mile. So honestly, wearing a heart rate monitor is probably the best way to do this. And then what's great about it is we're going to do some big fancy math, and it's going to tell us how well we performed on the assessment.
0 to that number. Once you have your number, you're going to plug it into an equation which can be found online and look at a VO2 max chart, which is where you can see how cardiovascularly fit you are.
So let me show you what this formula looks like. Let me show you what this calculator looks like. So if we go to Rockport walk test calculator, and you put your client's information in. We'll go with Bob again, right? Bob is 33 years old. So we put 33. Now I need to know his body weight as well. That's actually going to be important for the formula because they just got done walking a mile. So the formula needs to know how much like body was carried over the course of that mile. So we'll say Bob is 210 pounds. Okay. We'll say his heart rate at the end of the assessment was 121 beats per minute. And let's say it took him, he was trekking. It took, let's say, 14 minutes and 12 seconds to complete this test, which by the way, it's walking a full mile. So it will take quite, it's not the fastest test. I like this assessment, but it's not, I mean, it is lengthy. That's 15 minutes practically out of a 1 hour assessment, So I love the Rockport walk test, but if I do it, I usually actually don't do it in the first assessment. I try to do the YMCA step test because it's faster. But take a look. Bob landed in the average category. That's pretty good. So chances are I would give him either zone 1 or zone 2. You can see that here, right? If he landed in the average category, yeah, he's going to land in zone 2. He did pretty well there. So he qualified for here. Now, if he took longer to do that test, let's say it took him 16 minutes, I landed in the fair category, right? So he's going to go. So now suddenly I'm going to take Bob back to zone 1, but let's say he did it in like 12 minutes, and let's say his heart rate was only 110, right? He was able to walk a mile in 12 minutes. His heart rate didn't get very high. He crushed it. He did excellent, right? So he's going to qualify for zone 3. So that's how we use this, right? And what's cool about this test in particular, it actually gives us a number. We can track our VO2 max. Remember when we were talking about cardiorespiratory assessments? I think it was like Thursday of last week, or not cardiorespiratory assessment, sorry. We were talking about the cardiovascular system. We talked about what the VO2 max is, the maximum amount of oxygen you can consume. The more oxygen you can consume, the more it tells me that you've got more mitochondria, more hemoglobin. You get all the stuff inside your body that I can't, I'm not going to pull out my client and look under a microscope at their mitochondria, but I can tell if you have a lot of mitochondria, depending on how high your VO2 max is. The more oxygen you can consume, the more mitochondria you've got, right? The more hemoglobin, the more everything, the more muscle, So now I'm actually using this test to learn something about my client's body. So that is that assessment, right? So again, we're going to mark our client poor, fair, average, above average, good, or excellent. And that will put them in zone 1, 2, or 3, depending on how well they performed. And so I go back and I use my cardio assessment from the beginning to determine that, right? So like Marjan, like you pointed out, here is how this works, right? If you see these questions on your homework, you will need to know the Rockport walk test is used, by definition, it's used to estimate a client's VO2 max after a 1 mile bout of submaximal walking, or the YMCA step test. It determines a client's cardiorespiratory training zones based on submaximal stair climbing. Or you need to know what the heart rate max formula is, 220 minus your age, or what the BMI formula is, weight in kilograms divided by height in meters squared, right? There's going to be different questions on the final related to these various pieces of information. A lot of times they're definitions, right? But what I want you guys to know is how to do these things and why we use them for our clients, right? And that's it. You guys survived. It was a lot today, but hopefully none of it really was quite as technical as the posture stuff. I know memorizing muscles is sometimes the hardest stuff we have to do. But any questions on what we covered today or how it works? Nothing?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Simon, I think that's the last time you're going to see this stuff. I think it comes up one more time in PFT 102. You're my last mod 4, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Right? You're ready for capstone. What about my new folks? Marjan, Cyrus, Desiree, how you guys? Eric, how you guys feeling? Not Cyrus.
Good, no question, Brad. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. All righty.
Thank
Cool.
you.
All right, thanks, Brad. Have a good day.
Yeah. Let's get you guys out of here.